Hello.
Hello, everyone. We still have a few minutes and some more attendees.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Can you hear my grandson? I hope not, but he's loud today.
I do hear that, actually.
We'll try
Yeah.
to shut the door.
It's not the worst thing we could be hearing.
Absolutely not. As long as it's not mine, I'm fine with that.
I'm not sure if everyone got the email, but Michael Bruder will not be able to be with us this evening. He had a conflict.
Oh, here comes Eric. I believe we have the last of the applicant reps joining now. There is some members of the public that also submitted requests, but it is 7 o'clock and everyone's present, so.
With me. I will call this meeting to order at 7 o'clock p.m. Roll call, please.
Jeff Clapper,
Present.
Nick Bellis,
Present.
Amanda Edwards,
Present.
Chris Clevenger Morris,
Present.
and as mentioned prior, Michael Bruder sent an email that he will not be able to attend.
Is there a motion to excuse Mr. Bruder?
I'll make a motion to excuse Mr. Bruder.
Moved by Ms. Edwards. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Just to clarify, was that Mr. Clapper that made the second?
It was.
Thank you. I was looking down. I thought so. I just wanted to verify. Thank you.
I'm going to move into the preamble. The Planning Commission operates in accordance with the provisions of the Kent City Charter, the zoning code, and subdivision regulations, all of which establish the powers and duties of the commission. Members of the Planning Commission are appointed by the Kent City Council and serve without compensation. Certain cases, such as conditional zoning certificates, special zoning permits, overlay district projects, and zoning amendments, require public hearings before the Planning Commission. During the public hearing, any person wishing to address their concerns to the commission will be provided the opportunity. Once the public hearing is closed, it shall be at the discretion of the chair whether to allow any additional public comment. Cases such as site plan review and subdivision projects do not require a public hearing. However, the chair will allow public comment on each case as it is taken on the agenda. In each instance where the commission receives public comments or conducts a public hearing, those persons wishing to address their concerns to the commission will be required to do so under oath or positive affirmation. The oath or affirmation shall be administered to all who wish to speak at the beginning of the Planning Commission meeting. Once a decision has been made by the Planning Commission on a case, the case is closed for the commission as there is no provision to reopen a case. With the exception of a case falling under the subdivision code, any decision of the Planning Commission may be appealed to the city's Board of Zoning Appeals in accordance with the Chapter 1109 of the Zoning Code Anyone interested in appealing a decision of the planning commission is advised to seek private legal counsel. Mr. Fink, can you please administer the oath?
Anyone is planning to testify in front of the planning commission, if you please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you give before the planning commission to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So if you God, please say I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fink. Mr. Starr, it's my understanding that we haven't received any correspondence at this time.
That is correct.
Okay.
I would like to clarify for the record, there was one correspondence actually from development engineer Tim Starr regarding a page in the Buckeye Relief case that was submitted after packets went out that replaces that case. I think I actually have that specific for the record email.
Okay.
Once I find it, we can mention it on the record. You can continue. Oh, here it is. The change was to the design of the revision of the roof line. So it is observed on comparing sheet A4 that in your original packet to the subsequent one sent on April 28th, 2021. Thank you.
Thank you. As there is no old business, we'll move right into new business. PC 21-006, Buckeye Relief, 1181 West Main Street. The applicant is requesting a site plan review and conditional zoning certificate to locate a medical marijuana dispensary at the listed address. The subject property is zoned IC-R, Intensive Commercial Residential Zoning District. Could the staff please introduce the project?
Yeah. The site is, as you said, is at 1181 West Main Street, and it is accessed off of both Main Street and North Francis Street, West Main Street. Property is surrounded on all sides by intensive commercial residential properties. To the west, north, and east, there are automotive and repair shops. To the east, there's a barber shop. To the south, there are various retail storefronts, and to the north are 2 residences. I listed in your staff report several definitions specific to this case from section 1103.03. This is specifically because the city of Kent has not considered a medical marijuana dispensary yet, and I thought the definitions might be pertinent. So I will trust that you have read through those definitions. They are pulled directly from the Ohio Revised Code. So they are not of our making, but of the state's making. It should be noted that medical marijuana dispensaries are a conditional use in the ICR zoning district, and they are subject to section 1171.0, subsection 5, 17, 26, 27, 57, 58, 59, 60, and 61. Section 5, no lighting shall constitute a nuisance or in any way impair safe movement of traffic on any street or highway. No lighting shall shine directly on adjacent properties. 17, all permitted installations shall be maintained in a neat, orderly condition so as to prevent injury to any single property, any individual, or the community in general. A bond may be required to ensure that this provision will be met. Section 26, such uses shall be conducted not closer than 100 feet from any R district or a street right of way which abuts an R district, where the I district abuts upon but is separate from an R district by a street. The width of the street may be considered as part of the required setback. The construction, operation, and maintenance of such uses shall be such that they will not be hazardous, noxious, offensive due to the emission of odor, dust, smoke, cinders, gas, fumes, noise, vibration, refuse matters, or water carried wastes. Section 27, truck parking areas, maneuvering lanes, and access ways to the public street shall be designed to cause no interference with safe and convenient movement of an automobile and pedestrian traffic on and adjacent to the site. The site shall not be used for the storage of trucks, and truck parking shall be limited to a time not to exceed 24 hours. Section 57, such uses shall be conducted in a commercial building meeting all applicable building codes. Section 58, when considering whether proposed development meets the general standards and requirements found in the Kent City Ordinance 1107.05A, including the requirements for the development to be harmonious and appropriate in appearance with the existing or intended character of the of the general vicinity and such that the use shall not change the essential character of the same area. Kent City Ordinance 110705 S92. The Planning Commission may consider all nearby properties, including the properties outside the jurisdiction of the City of Kent. Section 59, every medical marijuana facility shall comply with all licensing requirements of the Ohio Administrative Code, Section 3796. Such facilities shall operate in compliance with every state law and city ordinance. Section 60, medical marijuana cultivator, processor, retail dispensary, or laboratory that tests medical marijuana shall not be located within 500 feet of the boundaries of a parcel or real estate having situated on it a school, church, public library, public playground, or public park. This does not apply to research related to marijuana conducted at State University, Academic Medical Center, or private research and development organization as part of a research protocol approved by an institutional review board or equivalent entity. Section 61, medical marijuana dispensary shall not be located within 500 feet of a community addiction services provider. That's all the legal stuff there. Architectural Review Board did review this case on April 6, 2021. They were the ones who suggested that the roof line be adjusted to remove the one high gable. That's pretty much everything that I've got in the staff report. The rest is just the procedural matters for approving or disapproving the case. I'll leave that to you now.
Thank you, Mr. Stark. Would the applicant like to present?
Sure. Hi, my name is Caroline Henry. I'm the Director of Government Relations for Buckeye Relief. And we also have on the call today, AJ Carabello, who is our Director of Retail Operations and a licensed pharmacist, and Matt Winningham, who is our Director of Security, to answer any questions you might have. We also have John Waddell, who is our architect who designed the facility. So a little bit about Buckeye Relief. We were founded in 2016. We are an Ohio-based company. We are owned and operated only by Ohioans. We only operate in Ohio. We are focused on the state and dedicated to Ohio. We operate a level 1, which is one of Ohio's large cultivation and processing facilities out of Eastlake. In 2017, we scored highest of anyone who submitted a cultivation level 1 application in Ohio. We were also the first large cultivation facility to open in Ohio and receive our certificate of operation from the Department of Commerce. The facility in Eastlake is about 60,000 square feet, and Buckeye Relief sells our products into all of the 52 operating dispensaries in Ohio today. We probably have the largest overall market share of any cultivator and processor operating in Ohio today. Matt, do you want to give a little bit of a presentation on just high level our security?
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. Again, Matt Winningham, the Director of Security. I am kind of the right-hand man of the Applicant Director of Security, which is Lou Merletti. Lou Merletti was the 19th Director of the Secret Service. And at the time in 1999, there'd only been 19 directors in the history of the Secret Service. So that's the top of the top. And Lou and I wrote the security plan, which, as Caroline alluded to, placed #1 in cultivation in the state of Ohio. Second to that, when we, or in addition to that, I should say, when we were the first to be audited and inspected on July 25th of 2018, not only did we come through with flying colors and no discrepancies, and I believe Andrew, Caroline, you know some of the compliance folks better than I do, was the lead auditor. We were asked if our site could be used for all incoming training auditors by the MMCP, just based off of the level at which we took security seriously. To echo also what Caroline said, I do believe we're still the only cultivator that actually delivers to all 50+ dispensaries in the state. So I personally am responsible for those, what end up being 40+ deliveries each week to every dispensary and every type of zone, both rural and urban. So we have a lot of familiarity with what the current situations are with really anything involved with dispensary security and the different regions we've been into.
AJ, do you want to talk a little bit about your background?
Hang on one second. We need everybody's address for the records when they speak.
And also, just as a reminder, it is a site plan review. So if you would have the designer speak to the site plan, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
So I'll give you my address real quick. Do you need our personal address, or will Buckeye Relief's address be sufficient?
Work is fine. The work address is fine.
Okay, so for all of us, you can use 33525 Curtis Boulevard in Eastlake, Ohio.
Did you have someone who wanted to speak to the site plan?
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, I'll speak to this. John Waddell, Urbach Waddell Architects, 2335 West 11th Street, Cleveland, Ohio, 44113. Well, as you all, excuse me, as you all know, this is an existing site, which was already talked about where it's located at. The building sits on the corner. There's a parking lot immediately to the east of the property. Parking is in that lot to the east, majority of it. There's existing parking also to the west that we're utilizing, and there's a handicap parking space there. The handicap ramp is also located there. It's an existing ramp. We are not putting an addition on the building. The only thing we're doing is putting a trash enclosure on the northeast corner of the building, and then putting some new materials and a new roof over the top of the building. Minor landscape improvements, is cleaning up the property, which it needs right now. We're adding a few light fixtures on the building. The site gets a lot of ambient light from the existing fixtures in the neighborhood, but just to provide a little additional security around the perimeter of the building, there are some small fixtures that are on the building. Let's see, what else can I tell you? We're also installing a bike rack immediately to the west of the building on the southwest corner. Yeah, I think that covers it. We're not adding any new curb cuts. We're utilizing everything that's existing there. The existing lot is getting reused. I think that sums it up for me.
Is there anyone else on your team who was part of the presentation?
AJ, do you want to make a couple comments?
Sure. My name is AJ Carabello. I am a licensed pharmacist in the state of Ohio. Actually, spent my entire life education all in Northeast Ohio. I'm an alumni of Northeast Ohio Medical University, where I graduated first in class. And for the past 2 years, I have been operating G-Leaf Medical Cannabis in Warren, Ohio, one of the busier dispensaries in the state. And I'm thrilled to be part of the Buckeye Relief team, where I'm going to be bringing that operational knowledge so that we can make sure that the patients in Kent, Ohio are well taken care of. And operations goes as far as the surrounding area as well. We want to make sure we're a good neighbor in the community. And, we want to make sure that patients are taken care of quickly, so there are no traffic jams in the parking lot without sacrificing patient care.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Henry, did anyone else on your team want to make any comments before we move on to questions for you and staff by the commission?
I'll make one more comment, just kind of dovetailing off of AJ's comments. In Eastlake, we've been there for 2.5 years. One of the things that I think is possibly understated with our message is our community involvement support. So with, for example, Eastlake, which is where the main facility is located, whether it is Eastlake community events, the police department, the fire department, and I've personally attended probably 15 events, and as well as donated to the community, as we want to be part of that community, and we want to be on a positive, on a trajectory with just communications, as well as training. We also have had events where we've allowed some of the first responders and some of the different entities to use the facility for some training to better them. And so I just wanted to highlight, we're very community centric, just kind of dovetailing off of what AJ said, from the first responder and law enforcement standpoint.
Thank you. All right, well, we're going to move on to questions from the commission. If any of the commissioners have questions for staff or the applicant, I'll start with Ms. Edwards.
I do just have a couple questions for staff. I know parking, that 39 spaces are being provided, but what is the requirement? I wasn't sure how we're categorizing this.
Actually, Eric and I just were having that discussion off record that the details for that and stormwater and lighting were not included in your staff report. So I apologize for that. If you give me a moment, I can look up what is required. I will say, though, that the dispensaries, I know from when we had to craft the language to add to the zoning code, it is by appointment only. So it is not a walk-in basis. So it would be, I would assume, less than 10, even including employees. But I will look what the requirement is in the ICR for such a use. Just give me a moment.
Yep, and then while you're doing that, follow-up question for the applicant, and Ms. Dussel just kind of mentioned that, you know, you see some of these documentaries and stuff in other states and the lines outside of the dispensaries and whatnot, and I'm sure that's going to be a concern for citizens, especially that live in the area. Can you just talk a little bit about your operations, how appointments work, how many people you would expect going in and out within a certain time frame, just to kind of educate us a little bit?
Absolutely. So the state does allow for online ordering and call ahead phone ordering. So patients who know what they would like, we will have an appointment set up where patients will be able to come in, their orders will be already ready. So those patients will rotate through fairly quickly. There will be patients who will want a consultation with the pharmacist. So obviously those patients might spend a little bit more time on site. Typically those patients might come from the doctor with their caregiver immediately after getting their card. So those are a little bit harder to schedule since those are usually their first time they present to the dispensary. But I can tell you that overseeing of the busiest dispensaries in the state, that we haven't had an issue with cars backing onto the road. And the reason being is we wholeheartedly used the online ordering platforms and did not overbook. So we are able to control patient flow in the building by controlling how many delivery or pickup times are scheduled per 15-minute time block.
Thank you. And could you also go into a little bit about delivery of the products coming into the facility and what time of day and a little bit more detail on that, please?
You want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. And I was going to add to the previous answer. We have a vested interest in not having an overbooked parking lot because that impedes the ability to accept deliveries. So we also, from a safety and security standpoint, we have to manage that flow for our own internal purposes. Speaking to deliveries, we use deliveries. The state is rather specific on the security and safety standpoint that goes into this. I mean, we could go into a couple of different areas that you're interested in, but from I guess really the tooth to tail of it, all deliveries have to be registered in a manifest with the state. Randomized routing is required. You have information about any of the team members on the delivery, and the deliveries are I kind of like to say this, they're rather uneventful. We were able to come in. The state requires all unmarked vehicles to include in case you have a mechanical breakdown and you rent a budget truck for the day. You've got to go find white magnetic signs to cover the budget decals on the side of the vehicle. So we have unmarked. We like to call low pro, low vis, low profile, low visibility, and that's a state requirement. And then we also are always in contact with the dispensary. If things are running late, running early, we also put in, and when I say we, I'm obviously speaking from the optic of the deliverer. When we're on the receiving side of this, we'll have the same type of mechanisms and processes put in place, but we also give a heads up to any delivery team that comes in that says, hey, we have an issue with the parking lot. We had an accident, we had something. So, again, the best I can say, and I may be missing the question, so please guide me if I am, but communication, dynamic, constant and relevant communications are the key to good deliveries.
So it sounds like most likely a box truck of some sort. It's not going to be a a huge truck, and it'll probably go, I'm assuming, to the back end of the building off that little side street back there?
No, it's a great question, and I'll even calibrate that down a few notches. A box truck, I'm not going to say they have not been used, but it's very unlikely. We're looking more at small little transit vans. Some of the smaller cultivators deliver in the trunk of a Toyota Tercel. Us being Buckeye Relief being the largest by market share and the only provider going to all dispensaries in the state, we're using Ford Transit vans. And you know how you have a family member buys a new car and then all of a sudden you see that car everywhere on the road. If you saw our Ford Transit vans, you'd notice there are at any given time 4 or 5 of them around you on interstates and everything else. It's a very low key delivery.
Okay, thank you.
I should also mention that the facility has a garage bay with a large door. So all deliveries will happen inside with that garage door down. They happen under video surveillance that the Board of Pharmacy has access to 24/7. So the deliveries will all occur out of sight of any of the residents or the local community, all within the dispensary.
Thank you. Mr. Clevenger-Moore.
I just wanted to clarify that the actual provided parking exceeds the parking requirement. And again, I apologize for that, but not being in the staff report. This was the first medical marijuana. And so it was, and we had a transition in staff. So we'll make sure that that doesn't happen again, but it is more than adequate for what is presented.
Thank you. Mr. Clevenger-Morris, that was all of my questions for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. Mr. Clapper.
Well, I think I want to follow up on parking a little bit. So that space total, Bridget, is around 18.
Right.
Okay. And with 39 shown, I was a little bit concerned about the spaces on the west side of the building that don't have a proper 12-foot aisle behind them on that road. And that's going to create any kind of safety issue with traffic on the road. It doesn't look like there's 12 feet shown behind the spaces. And you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Those were,
Go ahead.
oh, sorry, yeah, those are existing spaces that have been there, and we assumed, of course, I know what that means sometimes, that it was okay for us to continue to utilize those spaces.
That is correct. As long as you are not redoing the parking lot, the existing parking layout is continued as a non-conforming use. So yes.
Okay. I don't think it was a huge deal. I just wanted to bring up just to talk about it. And then I know we had a case maybe 2 years ago where there was a different site plan for this building where they talked about removing the apron, the furthest west apron on Main Street. Is that something that should be considered here again? That entranceway, that was never completed as far as I know, correct? Under the previous tenant?
Right, and I believe that was at the request of the applicant, not at the request of the city, but I'll have to look back at that file and verify that.
Yeah, I believe the applicant came in and requested that was a condition of some approval prior, and then the applicant came in and asked that condition to be lifted, if I remember correctly. But I'd be a little bit concerned about that entrance. There's one just to the east of it, I think would be a better entrance for the main parking lot. I'd just be a little bit concerned with that apron. There's not a lot of room between there and the front of the building. So people trying to come in and out of there that close to the light and that close to the front door would be my only two concerns. And anybody else on the commission has any opinion about that, just let me know. And I do know that it came up in previous discussions in the past. And that's all I have.
I believe wasn't the prior use, I will have to look in the record, but I believe the prior use was a higher retail type use. Wasn't it going to be a lending facility?
I think at the time, and it was before I was on the commission, but I was on the commission when the applicant asked to have it removed. I think at the time they were selling used cars out of that lot.
Last time I recall it being was the used car lot.
Yeah.
We will pull, if there is a condition on the site regarding that matter, if the site plan is approved and the project goes forward, that condition, if it was linked to the site, would have to go forward. So we will clarify that and let the applicant know if that was a condition that is set on that parcel. So.
Okay, and just for my clarification, so that condition carries over even with a new site plan for a new business because that was already put in place on a previous site plan for that location, it still carries?
I'm not going to say that until I see the legal language. That's why we will clarify it for the record for the planning commission and for the applicant. I
Okay.
also, for the record, did want to clarify that the applicant is seeking conditional zoning use certificate in order to apply for the use with the state office. They need to have that zoning approved prior to actually getting it approved by the state. So I just wanted to make sure that's clarified for the record and the public, that even a conditional site plan review and approval tonight does not mean this will come to fruition. It still has to be submitted to the state. Thank you.
And just real quick for the applicant, just to make sure I'm looking at it right, that is on the south side of the building, right at Main Street. That's going to be the main entrance for customers to come in. That's for the applicant.
Yeah, no, I was on mute, sorry.
Oh, no
Yeah,
problem.
the southwest is the main entrance,
Okay.
facing Main Street. Yeah,
Okay. That's all I have right now.
okay.
If I may, real quick, I wanted to address something Ms. Sussel said a minute ago. I just, for the record, to make sure we're being 100% transparent, we will accept walk-in patients. It doesn't have to be only reservations. So we will also have walk-ins, just to make sure that's clear.
Thank you. Mr. Clapper, that was all you had?
That's all I have right now.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bellis?
I'm familiar with the building. I drive by it every day to work, so I've had a good chance to look at it. I'm also familiar with the workings of the medical marijuana. I have a relative that works in the field, and we've had conversations about how the business works, the appointments, consultations, things like that. So I have all the information I need. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bellis. I guess I would say the only concern that I had was security. As someone who lives essentially 3 streets from this location, that was my primary concern. And I appreciate Mr. Waddell taking the time to answer some of those questions, and Mr. Winningham as well. I have no further questions for staff or the applicant at this time.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, can I insert a comment that came to me via public through a call?
Absolutely.
It was an inquiry with regards to the national approach to the expansion of recreational marijuana. And if that were to happen in Ohio, would this use be allowed? I just wanted to clarify for the record that this use is approved or disapproved based on medical marijuana requirements in our zoning code as they currently exist. And until the law in the state of Ohio and the zoning code were changed, that would not occur.
Thank you, Ms. Susan.
Thank you.
With that being said, if there's anyone in the public who would like to speak on this issue, please let us know now. Fred P., I see your hand is raised. Please state your name and address for the record.
Sure, my name is Fred Pierre. I live at 480 Longmere Drive. I live in the neighborhood and also pass by that on my way to work. And it does seem like an appropriate use for that facility. And I think it will have a good impact.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public? Ms. Sussel, was there anyone else signed up to speak that we know of?
I'm sorry, I was muted. There is some other members for the public, but I believe for this, they're for the next case.
Okay.
Thank you.
With that, we're going to close public comments. And if there are any additional questions from commissioners for staff or the applicant, now would be the time. Ms. Edwards.
I'm going to save mine for when we move into discussion.
Okay. Mr. Clapper.
Nothing for me.
Mr. Bellis.
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
All right. Are there any final comments from the applicant before we move into planning commission discussion? For your reference, once we move into planning commission discussion, you guys won't be able to really chime in, so this is your last opportunity to add anything in that you'd like to. Mr. Winningham, I believe you're muted if you're trying to speak.
I won't try to tell you that I'm also a technology guy, then that wouldn't really bode well for me, would it? I was just going to add in that on the security bit, I can't put this in front of you from a scientific study, but in Ohio, it has indicated that where dispensaries have moved in more often in rougher spots, there's actually been an increase in security and safety just due to all the surveillance that the state requires, kind of like when a bank moves into a neighborhood. So I only bring that up because you did mention security at the very end there. I know you didn't exactly have a question on it, but I did want to put that on our conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, hearing none, I will move into discussion by the commission. Ms. Edwards, I believe you have some comments.
In terms of the project and the site plan, I'm in agreement with everything. My main concern is, and we talk about this all the time, especially on this part of town in West Main, is the thoroughfare plan. And we've been working for, I don't know how long I've been on commission now, 8 years or so, at really trying to clean up the travel into downtown Kent. Last time this specific piece of property came before us, we talked about landscape, trying to make it look better. I know the site plan is going to make the building itself look much better, which is extremely helpful to this area. However, the landscape, in my opinion, is still extremely lacking. The rain garden that we approved last time, I was extremely hesitant to approve that, and we can see what it looks like. It looks like a bunch of dead weeds in a pile. So I don't know if other commissioners have strong feelings or if there's any suggestions or ideas from the applicant, other commissioners, about how we can add some landscape to the site besides just, I think there were 4 hydrangea and just a couple low plants along the side of the building.
Ms. Suso, can you bring up the landscape plan on the screen for us, please?
Additionally, I was thinking about the West Apron as well, and I can just recall wanting that West Apron put in. I know that we did some back and forth and we didn't get very far with the applicant. I'm curious if we can close off that curb and maybe put in some kind of streetscape, maybe some bushes along the front, something to make it look better than a building surrounded by concrete.
Absolutely. I think we've spent a lot of time focusing on this specific area of Kent in the last year or so, and we've definitely spent a lot of time. And if Peter were here, I think he'd agree, and focusing on the landscaping to make sure that we're beautifying the city when we're making these decisions. So I definitely think it's worth having a conversation about. Does anybody else have comments on the landscaping? Mr. Clapper or Bellis?
I agree with you folks, because when I go to work, I pull straight in front of the building, and it is a lot of hardscape. So I think greenery, landscaping would be a requirement should the project go forward. But I think that could be easily addressed. There's so many options available right now, so I don't think that's going to be a hindrance. I think that could be easily addressed.
You can add additional landscaping as a condition to your vote as well.
What would, Mr. Fink, I guess this question would be for you. I was actually about to ask before Ms. Susel mentioned it. What would our options be with the language if we wanted to add additional landscaping? Is that something that we can leave up to the city when we're looking at technical review, or is that something that we need to be a little more specific about in making a motion?
We would want you to be a little bit more specific than just saying leave it up to the city. If you give us some guidance, however, you could delegate that to the city as part of technical plan review, but we would definitely want more guidance from you. Or you could put in specific requirements. It's your motion. It'll be whatever you choose to do, we will then go and enforce.
Okay. Ms. Edwards, did you have anything else?
No, I'm 100% for, adding new businesses and upgrading the area. And I think landscape is an important part of upgrading this project in the thoroughfare plan.
Thank you. Mr. Clapper.
I think the building could use some more landscaping. I think that we do need to be specific for the applicant's sake as to where we'd like to see it. I don't claim to be a landscape architect, so I'd be hesitant to lay out the exact guidelines any more than doubling the existing amount of landscaping, but maybe having that on the east side of the building. Again, it's not my forte, but I can see the benefit to it. And I don't know how we go about specifying that.
And for me, the important part is along West Main, not necessarily putting it behind the building where the rain garden was, but actually somehow putting some streetscape on West Main.
Given the relative close, can we ask the applicant to even put landscaping, like how far into the right of way can landscaping be added? I don't know exactly.
Mr. Starr, Mr.
From
Stoll.
the street to the front of the building.
The issue with this site is because they're not changing the existing site, the requirements of the landscape code that were adopted and brought in aren't applied. So any additions you would be adding are going to be a condition of the approval, as Mr. Fink said, but it doesn't necessarily need to follow the specific landscape chapter that was adopted in, I believe it was 2017. So since they're not actually changing anything, if you were to want a flower bed added or something, we could work with our arborist or work with the applicant if you wanted to instruct that. Once we've consulted with the existing site and because there is line of sight issues and things like that, but we could look at it with them. You could require that of the motion, but I couldn't give you specificity on what would be required here since it's existing. They're not actually changing the hardscape or the building itself. Eric, you have anything to add?
I think you said it, just like I said before, said you can, whatever conditions you want to put on, because this is a conditionally permitted use, you have the authority to make various requests for landscaping as part of your conditionally site plan approval.
Okay, well, for example, then, could we put in language that said, we'd like to see them double the existing amount of landscaping, specifically on the West Main side of the building, and in doing so with the city arborist for the design. I mean,
I would say in consultation with the arborist plan, because we have an urban forestry plan, a vegetation plan, but I would worry about using words such as double because, you might want to say that you want to increase, the landscaping on the front. You also could approve the conditional zoning certificate and require them to come back with a modified landscape plan that then you could approve separately. Eric, could they do that?
Would that be sufficient for the state's requirement for their licensure?
They would get the conditional zoning certificate. They just wouldn't have their landscape plan approved. I mean, I'm looking at Eric, our attorney, to confirm this.
Yeah, I said they would be able to walk out of here with an approval if everything else met your standards. But just like they'd have to come back for technical plan review, you could have them come back for a landscape plan to be approved. But that would still allow them to go forward with having an approved plan when they go in front of the state for their application.
And we have had other cases such as Clavin. Actually, that rain garden that you're speaking of, Ms. Edwards, was when Clavin had to come back because they neglected to provide the landscape plan, if you remember, when they were seeking their conditional zoning use certificate for that. So it's not setting a precedent. It would give them the conditional zoning certificate and then the requirement to come back with a landscape plan, for example, if the project moves forward, before they can even get any of their permits.
that seems very logical.
Building permits.
Yeah, it seems logical, and that gives us time to find out about that apron as well, because that could change where the landscape goes.
I think that allows us to help them move along their way without creating an undue burden on the applicant and also the time necessary to make the decisions we need to make. Mr. Bellis, are you okay with that as well?
Yes, that sounds good.
Mr. Clapper, did you have anything else?
Nope.
Bellis?
No, thank you.
Okay. Like I said before, my only concern with this project was the security side. As someone who lives in this neighborhood, I am happy to see a business that's coming in that has taken the time to, really consider the bigger picture. And I agree with Ms. Edwards in that I would like to see a little bit of beautification when it comes to the landscape there, so we can get rid of some of that concrete feel. But overall, I'm very excited to see this, and I wish you all the best. If there's no other discussion at this time, does someone have a motion they'd like to entertain?
I do. I move that in case PC 21-006, the Planning Commission approve the conditional zoning certificate with the following conditions. 1, acquisition of proper licensing and approvals from the state of Ohio. 2, technical plan review. And 3, return to the Planning Commission for a landscape plan review.
I have a motion from Ms. Edwards. Is there a second?
Review and approval.
Ms. Edwards, do you accept the change to your?
I accept the change.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Clapper. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 4-0. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Good night.
Next on the agenda, we have PC 21-010, State Route 43 and 261, Triway Investment Properties LTD. The applicant is requesting a zoning map amendment to the parcel from its current C commercial zoning district to the CR commercial high density multifamily residential zoning district. Would staff like to present?
Thank you, sir. As outlined in Chapter 1111 of the Kent Zoning Code, the process for requesting a zoning map amendment, the application contents are specified in 111103 and are listed below in the staff report. As you can see, if you have read through the bulk of this, staff has found that the application meets all the requirements. And I'm not going to read through the 3 pages of this, because I don't think you want to live through that. You do need to consider that in changing the zoning of this parcel or amending the map for this parcel, that all of the proposed uses could be applied to this property. So there's a whole different host of uses that could be used in this property, including all kinds of different living conditions, residential home occupations, and so on and so forth. So yeah, as well as specially permitted uses, adult bookstores, and so on. Tonight go ahead.
To clarify, specially permitted are not allowed in the CR district?
Oh, not?
No, they are not.
All right. Well, then I misread that. My apologies. All right. Planning Commission. Pardon?
No adult bookstores for the record.
All right. Yes.
Thank you.
Planning Commission shall consider the proposed amendment along with any supporting documentation provided by the applicant, both in writing and or oral testimony provided at the public hearing for the proposed amendment. That's this evening. And we ask you to render a recommendation for approval or disapproval to City Council. That's pretty much the crux of it. You have any questions?
Pretty much.
I think we're good. Ms. Suso, did you have anything to add?
I was just going to say, Eric can speak to the legal specificity in the beginning if anyone had any questions about the submissions with regards to the application for the amendment. The map amendment does require the applicant to submit certain responses, and those were verified by the assistant law director and listed in green in the staff report. So if anyone had any questions on those, they could speak specifically to Eric on those.
Okay. We may circle back to that in the questions section. If staff has nothing else, we'll move on to the applicant presentation. Who's here to present on behalf of the project?
Yes, hello. Everybody can hear me okay? My name is Pete Schwigerut. I'm with MVAH Partners. A little background on us. MVAH Partners is
I'm sorry, can you state your address for the record first?
Yes, 9100 Center Point Drive, Westchester, Ohio, 45069.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. As mentioned, MVH Partners is a multifamily housing developer. We've been doing development now for 27 years, developed, own, and manage around 10,000 units in approximately 16 states. Most of those are here in Ohio, from as far corner as Cincinnati all the way up to East Liverpool, Ohio, and really anywhere and everywhere in between. What we develop the most are really two product types. We develop senior independent living. In fact, oh my goodness, probably 12 years ago, we attempted to do a senior independent living here community in Kent. That unfortunately our financing didn't come through for that, and we had some but since then, we've certainly been continuing to look at the area and trying to determine how we can help fill and fit the various housing needs of the community. And that's how this site came up. What we would use the site for is multifamily, and that's what we approached the planning department with, is a desire to develop multifamily on what is right now probably envisioned and foreseen and obviously zoned for commercial. As everyone's likely aware, and certainly COVID didn't help this, is the retail and commercial world is a very changing and transitioning place right now. And a lot of new development is, especially housing development, is occurring in these commercial cores and corridors where either older worn out commercial is being redeveloped, or sites like this where an undeveloped site that was probably considered potential future B space in retail that unfortunately never developed because the demand was limited and the market was being met at your other commercial development areas. We thought this was a great site for those very reasons. We wanted to stay infill and in the core, and as you know, there's certainly not many sites of any real size and substance in the core of the community. Downtown's been redeveloping wonderfully. And this is at least kind of at the edges there, still in the community, not out in where we're developing farms and trying to annex land. So, and also close and walkable to proximity and to services and amenities. And that's always a big benefit to our residents and how we can house and help people live efficient and effective lives. What we're proposing on this, or what we would propose if we can get the zone change, is a multi-generational housing development that would include a mix of senior independent living. That product is age restricted, 55 plus, and it would have its own community amenities on site, the community rooms, fitness center, business center, theater rooms, all that kind of separated from the other side of the development, which would be workforce housing. Right now, and this is common in many communities, is there's what's known as the missing middle. We've got development out there that, in your case, really serves a lot of student housing, but also there's both ends of the spectrum. The higher income markets are being addressed, and there are lower or very low income options being met. But those folks in there making $30,000 to $60,000 a year really do not have any rental or high quality new affordable rental options. And that's what we're trying to deliver. With our funding and financing, we can't to rent to full-time students. We're not trying to do student housing. We're trying to serve working individuals out in your community making between $18 and $27 an hour. So this development would really try to serve multiple demographics within your community within one development. Now, with that said, unfortunately, we didn't want to just rezone this site for R4. It is in a commercial district. We're trying to develop this as multifamily. But if our development weren't to go through, certainly I think you would want to still retain the ability to keep the commercial options on the table. This is in an area that has flexibility and is in transition. So with that, working with staff, this zoning classification made the most sense because it still permitted the existing commercial uses, and at the same time, through a conditional use, offered up the ability to do these other, maybe more newer options where we might try to do some higher density housing that can kind of function well with a commercial center like this. So with that, this zoning made sense in both fashions, and that we could still accommodate what the district was initially planned and zoned for, but at the same time would open up that flexibility and ability to think a little bit outside the box. And we would still have to come back to you for for conditional use, just like the development before us did, so that you would have a chance to look at and confirm what we're doing makes sense and is right. I do have some concept sketches and plan elevations of things we've done that we're trying to envision for the area. I can share those if desired. I know it's technically not part of this. It would be more part of the conditional use we'd bring forward in the future. But I do like to frame and be able to show you kind of where we hope to head with this. Now, we would be applying for some financing that will take a little time. And with that financing, we can move forward. We're also trying to protect the existing rights of the property and allow for the most flexibility for the property, not only for the owner, but also for the city and community, that really gives you the ability to look and see more with the development. So with that, happy to answer any questions you might have or share some of those other exhibits I had mentioned. I look forward to your feedback.
Thank you. Questions for the applicant or staff by commissioners? Mr. Bellis?
I don't know if he can, I'm just curious about the renderings. He could maybe come back at the end and other people could have some questions and he can maybe take a minute later. It's up to you how you want to handle that. I'm just curious how they look.
Is that up there?
Yeah, thank you.
So this is a development.
Here real quick, that despite the many renderings, remember that there is no guarantee that this is what's going to be developed. This is a proposal, but we cannot make any decisions based upon this proposed development. It could become anything else if this zoning code change occurs.
This is a map amendment, so it's specific to all the permitted and conditionally permitted uses in that chapter. So we tend not to focus on a proposed project, even though that is obviously the emphasis for this presentation. And I also want to clarify while I have the mic for the record, I did go in and double check our zoning code. That specially permitted use is still in this section. However, it is removed in the pending one that will be subject to approval by council hopefully next month. So technically for the next month, the adult bookstore is allowed, conditionally allowed.
I can promise you I can't move that fast. And I guess I'm glad to hear it's conditional too, because that would probably take too much time to get through anyways. Sorry, I shouldn't digress there. Yeah, and I apologize. I do want to agree absolutely with staff and council that what I'm showing you is what we will bring forward in theory if we can get the zoning in the future. But they are correct in that if the owners wanted to terminate with us and move in a different direction, certainly somebody else could bring something different. What I will say to the multifamily is that it is a conditional use. And so you would at minimum be able to see and look at those buildings as they came forward if this zone change were approved.
Right, Mr. Bellis, I would recommend if you're amenable to it, that we hold off on looking at any of that so it doesn't influence our decision. As Bridget pointed out, there could be a lot of changes if they decide to push for this change and then the change was adopted, they could sell the property tomorrow and it could be proposed something else in 2 weeks. So I would rather we just discuss what it could potentially be and all the different things, and then we'll consider any proposed drawings when they come to us in a formal proposal.
Yes, that's fine.
Did you have any other questions?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clapper?
Nothing for me at this time.
Ms. Edwards?
No questions.
I also have no questions. Who is here to speak on behalf of the public, Ms. Susel?
You.
I think you're muted.
Bridget, you're muted.
Fred Priere, who's raising his hand, is, and then there's another Maria, I believe.
Mr. Priere, would you state your address again for the record, please?
Certainly. My name is Fred Pierre. I live at 480 Longmere Drive in Kent. I'm here today to talk to the Commission and the MVAH partners about the Cooper Rider Kent Bog preservation. My name's Fred Pierre. I'm a member of the Kent Environmental Council and a nature writer. On weekends, I hike with my family. We've hiked all over the city and most county parks. Our favorite hike is the state nature preserve called the Tom S. Cooper Rider Kent Bog on Malloy Road in Kent. The bog preserves a unique ecosystem that's incredibly biodiverse. Because it maintains a warmer winter temperature than surrounding areas, it's able to support flora and fauna that we don't often see, like endangered yellow-spotted turtle, smooth green snake, eastern wood frogs, red fox, bald eagles, and deciduous tamarack trees. I've seen all of them except one. I haven't yet spotted a turtle. The bog depends on acidity for its microclimate to function. It's like a giant composter for peat moss. Peat moss thrives in water that's highly acidic. If the acidity is diluted, the peat moss can't grow, and that endangers the entire bog ecosystem. Large amounts of runoff entering the bog would have catastrophic consequences. To that end, it's important that any developer of the property to the north of the bog plan carefully for stormwater retention and disposal in flood level events. Secondary considerations are lighting and traffic, which can impact wildlife, and our shared experience of the bog's natural beauty. Portage Park District has worked hard to secure the surrounding properties, but I recommend that a tree-filled buffer be maintained on the north side of Malloy Road with appropriate lighting covers to eliminate ambient light pollution. An appropriate project will take into account the proximity of buildings, entrances, and parking areas to the state nature preserve and will incorporate protection of the Kent Bog into its design. People visit the Kent Cooper Rider Bog every day. It's a great trail to hike with kids because it's short and you can't get lost. If it's the right time of year, you can even pick blueberries. For happy hikers, green snake, and red fox, please help us preserve this natural treasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pierre. I see Maria's iPhone.
Hi, yeah. I think Fred covered most of our concerns for the most part. We live next door.
Can you state your name and address for the record, please? I'm sorry.
Maria Burwalter at 955 Malloy Road. It's next door to the property that's being developed.
And my name is Eric Walter at 955 Malloy Road, Kent 44240.
Thank you.
And as you said, we're adjacent property owners to the parcel with the proposed rezoning to it, and have the same concerns with the bog, as well as preserving as best as possible just the general feel of Malloy Road and the traffic patterns that may be associated with any potential project.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public?
Yes, I'd like to address the issue of the bog. My name is David Hall. I've been a longtime resident of the Kent area, and I was personally responsible for locating the bog there, for making it a state-owned facility. I represented the owner of the property. I sold it to the Department of Natural Resources in an attempt to preserve it. I think you're a little off on your property boundaries. First of all, topographically, the property in question for the rezoning is not in any way going to drain into the bog. It's got to go across 261. I don't see the relevance to Malloy Road. I'm also a member of the Kent Environmental Council, and I think that your concerns over this possibly damaging it or putting in a tree buffer is not only excessive, but unnecessary. I think you're misunderstanding where this property is located. We're on the north side of 261. The drainage would have to go through 261 to get there.
Mr. Hall, could you state your address for the record, please?
1150 Pin Oak Drive, Kent.
Thank you. I apologize for interrupting.
No problem.
Do you have anything else to add, Mr. Hall?
No, just having worked for over a year to make sure that this bog was preserved and went to the Department of Natural Resources for preservation. I am one of the most concerned people in the community to see that the bog is maintained. We've had a long history of development in the Kent area. We brought in 38% of the industrial base of the community. We've done a lot of things, and we've never once violated the thing. And the threat you might have to the bog is what's presently going on the property north of Malloy Road. We're another section north. We're north of 261. I would really appreciate you looking more specifically at the drainage requirements. This is in no way, in my opinion, I'm an experienced developer. I've developed over 3,000 acres of industrial property. Drainage is a crucial issue for us in any development. Stormwater detention, stormwater retention, and managing that is essential to every project we've been involved in. This is in no way, in my opinion, going to be an adverse impact to the bog, and I would not support it if it were. So I would appreciate if you would take the time to reconsider what your concerns are and get more specific and pertinent about the functionality of what we're proposing here with this development as opposed to the bog.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. It is my understanding, Ms. Susel and Mr. Fink, that we allow each individual in the public to speak once, as it's not open for debate between public members, and that we move on to close from there. Is that correct?
Would be correct.
Okay.
Is there a way to clarify the parcel? Is it north of 261
Yes.
or south of, or the south of 261?
I can have Ms. Susel look into that. Eric, I appreciate your question. At this time, though, I am going to have to close public comment if there's no new comments to be made from individuals who haven't already spoken.
Thank
you. Ms. Susel, are you able to make that clarification?
Tim, do you have the map in front of you as part of the packet? I don't have the applicant's packet with me. That should be, is that something you have with you?
Yeah, just give me a second. I'm getting to it.
It is north of 261.
I think it'd be good for the public, though, if he could put up the map, if possible.
Okay, if he can't, I can definitely pull it up.
Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes.
It's on its side. So this is north over here. Here's 261. This is 43. This outline of blue is the parcel in question. So the bog, I believe, is south over in this area. Down here, Malloy Road is further down south altogether.
And could you point out where the Marks Shopping Center is so they can get a reference here?
Right in this area here.
Thank you, Mr. Starr.
Yep.
All right, with that, public comment is now closed. If there are any additional questions from commissioners for staff or the applicant, now would be the time for those. Ms. Edwards.
No further questions.
Mr. Clapper.
Nothing for me.
Mr. Bellis.
Nothing at this time.
Thank you all. I have no questions. Final comments from the applicant. If there's anything else you wanted to add, Mr. Swigert, now would be the time.
No, just that we appreciate your time and can assure those that are on the line otherwise that we will still be adhering to strict water, stormwater, runoff, and filtration standards of the city. And we take great pride in our work, and we'll look forward to working with staff if we get the opportunity to make sure that's done right.
Thank you. With that, we're going to move into discussion by the commissioners. Ms. Edwards.
Okay. For me, there's a long history of multi-family housing development and new projects in the city. We had that extensive housing study done, which really showed that there was a shortage of the single family homes and the senior housing. Being that we don't have a category specifically for student housing or family housing, to me, it's a building, and anybody can purchase it. Anybody can get that lot and put whatever they want in. We've seen senior apartment buildings or senior centers turn into student housings from being sold. So there's a lot of concern with another apartment building type project in the city. Prior to COVID, the university attendance was starting to decline. Who knows what's going to happen and how we're going to rebound and what our rental housing situation is going to be over the next year or two. So for me, I would not be in favor of adding high density housing.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Clapper?
I can echo Ms. Edwards' concerns about housing, but we have to look at the full scope of what is possible on a CR parcel, should we choose to recommend the zoning change. And when I look at the possibilities for the C zoning versus the CR, I don't see anything that makes me hesitant to move forward with a recommendation for approval. It's just as likely that they could put up any number of things on that parcel once the zoning is changed, and they could put up any number of things on that parcel under the current zoning. And that's all I have.
Mr. Bellis?
No comments.
Okay. I'm looking at my notes here, and I tend to go along the same thought line as Amanda. While I appreciate the developer has certain plans and he attempted to share some of that with us this evening, there's nothing that stops the developer from selling the parcel as soon as a change goes through to someone else who has different plans. At one point we made a reference to the funding model not allowing for student housing, and while it may not allow for student housing in this instance, it doesn't mean the next person or the person after that doesn't want to put in student housing. And I'm just going to say, typically Amanda and I line up when it comes to the sets of student housing after student housing after student housing and the issues that we have with affordable housing. And I also have some concerns when we're talking about that plan and making these decisions, when we say that we still have to, it's going to take some time and we have to look at funding and we have to look at a bunch of other stuff. To Mr. Clapper's point, no, there's not a lot on here that is concerning to me, but I also don't want to see another high-rise apartment complex for students in that area. So that would be the biggest concern for me. I don't think that it would have any implications on the bog. As someone who visits the bog regularly with, my family, be it for exercise or for Pokemon Go, whichever reason you're there for, it's a great outdoor space, but I don't think this project would affect that based off of what I've seen from the plans. But for me, I'm stuck here. I tend to agree that this could have bigger implications, specifically for a larger housing unit. But that's my only concern. Everything else is acceptable to me. It's just that one piece that makes me hesitant. So
Can I make one more?
Explain me.
Can I make one clarification?
I'm actually, no, I apologize. We are in final discussion and the applicant is not able to jump in. Amanda, did you have something?
Yeah, Mr. President, I just want to say, in response to Mr. Clapper, the difference between really the commercial and the CR, the biggest difference is that residential aspect. Most of the things in the CR are permitted in the C as well, but it brings in the single family homes, which isn't going to happen on that piece of land. The duplexes aren't going to happen. It's going to be the apartment buildings. We have 2 going up right now in downtown that aren't even rented out. We don't know what the capacities are going to be. Are they going to be full? Are they not? And then how are things going to start shifting from the older developments into the newer buildings, and then what the pricing is going to be and who they're going to accommodate. So I think we have a lot of shifts in addition to the lower attendance over at the university right now. We don't necessarily know what's going to happen. And the city spent a lot of money on that housing study, which told us what we needed and what we didn't need. So I think it would be irresponsible to allow another building at this time.
Mr. Clapper?
I totally understand your concerns, Amanda, and some of the housing I definitely think that we don't need as well if it were to turn to student housing. But something to keep in mind that anything that were to come back for us for site plan review for any type of housing would all be conditionally permitted and not just permitted. So that's something that if an application comes through for site plan review for any kind of housing situation, it's something that can be addressed at that time.
But remember that that's not 100% guaranteed, and we have been taken to court multiple times.
I'm well aware.
We can't hide behind that. I know everyone tells us we can, but we know we can.
Ms. Suso, can you speak to the housing study?
Yes, I can. So the housing study was a joint housing study that was done 2016. It was the final version, and it looked at all housing in the city. And what it found was that the student-oriented housing was over-inventoried, what we would call. There were more beds than what it seemed was going to be sustainable through enrollment, and that was without a pandemic. And we had a shortage of affordable housing and single-family housing. So those two were shortages. So while I respect the developer's presentation of a proposed tax credit project, there is no guarantee with the zoning code map amendment that that is the housing that will go in. So the commissioner's comments with regards to it approves all the uses on that site, it is true and needs to be taken into consideration. I will say that we are tracking housing rental lease-up rates as we do every year. And they are at the newer complexes quite low as of just a month ago, which reflects what the housing study had predicted would occur. But of course, that has been accelerated now as a result of the pandemic. But for comparative purposes, the lease-up rates as of April 1st for the Latitude are at 45% lease-up. Province 86% lease up, Ryan Place 75, University Oaks 63%. So these are substantively lower than the lease up rates of a year ago. So the anticipated decline in the student oriented housing as reflected in the housing study of being over inventoried, and we would see this type of activity or decrease in activity is holding true.
Does anybody else have any comments? So at this point, I guess I would ask if any of the commissioners have a motion to make. Either way, we have to push a motion through so we can either vote it up or down. With my understanding, and I see Mr. Fink nodding, so I believe that's correct.
I'll make a motion. I move that case PC 21-010, the Planning Commission recommend to Kent City Council to disapprove the zoning map amendment to amend the 4.47 acre parcel from C commercial to CR commercial high density multifamily residential. And that is parcel ID 45-004-00-00-053-000.
There's a motion by Ms. Edwards. Is there a second? So we'll ask one more time. Is there a second for that motion? Hearing no seconds, I apologize, Ms. Edwards, your motion cannot be entertained. Is there another motion to be considered?
Make a motion.
Okay.
I move that in case PC 21-010, the Planning Commission recommend to the Kent City Council to approve the zoning map amendment to amend the 4.47 acre parcel ID 45-00-00-00-053-000 from C commercial to CR commercial high density multifamily residential.
There's a motion from Mr. Clapper. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Bellis. All right, so for the record, this motion would send a resolution to council recommending the approval of the change. Correct, Mr. Fink? Yes. Okay, so I believe that this is going to be a bit divided, so I'm going to do a roll call vote. So Mr. Clapper. I'll need you to unmute Mr. Clapper.
Wrong button, my bad. Aye.
Mr. Bellis,
Yes.
Ms. Edwards.
Nay.
I am going to abstain. With 2 yeses, 1 no, and 1 abstention, the motion carries 2-1.
No,
Nope, that's wrong. Nope, I've been yelled at. What did I do?
Planning Commission to approve always have to have a minimum of 3 votes to approve, whether it's 3 out of 5 or 3 out of 3. It has to have 3 votes to approve.
So you're gonna make me actually go yes or no, or okay.
Or keep the conversation going, one of the two.
Or if you stand with your abstention, it would die for lack of.
Effectively defeat it.
Yes.
Did we need to advise the applicant of this before moving forward or no? Because there was a quorum.
We have to advise if there's 3 members.
Right.
Okay.
So, like I said, I'm torn. I mean, I'll give you both 90 seconds to sway my opinion. I'm torn. I think adding any additional housing for students in a large complex is going to be a disaster for Kent. I think changing it could open up some opportunities for that area that could be beneficial for Kent. My biggest concern in all of it is not necessarily this developer, but who owns it next. Because if their funding doesn't come through for this project and they sell it tomorrow after we recommended a change, what does it become?
I totally agree with you, Chris. And I think my voting history, I think I've voted against pretty much every multi-unit student type housing that I've seen so far. I don't see this becoming student housing just based on the way the student housing market is going. Like I said before, I think this all comes back to this at best as something that's conditionally permitted when we see a site plan review. I do think there is a lack of affordable family housing, like a single young working individual housing. I think there's a severe lack of that in Kent. This is opportunity to hopefully fill some of that gap. And I trust that as developers,
But houses there.
the numbers that we see as well, and they know that the demand for student housing is less and they have to tap into a new market. And I have a little bit of faith that that trend's going to continue and that we will see a proposal that reflects that.
Ms. Edwards.
With the lease rates in the buildings, and we don't have student housing and we don't have family, it's all one housing, but we know the majority of the students go to certain buildings and whatnot. Their lease levels are low. They're going to start transitioning to certain buildings. Rents are going to go up, or they're going to change buildings to be more fitted for families and working people, and things are going to start shifting as enrollment goes down. So the last thing we want is a bunch of tall apartment buildings that have 40 or 50%, filled, and we have multiple and more buildings going up constantly. We have new buildings going up that aren't even leased out yet. So it's maybe in a year or two we reevaluate, but right now we don't need it, and there's too many uncertainties.
At this point, I mean, I think I appreciate where you're both coming from. And I don't want to see, like I said, I don't want to see additional student housing. And, you make a good point that it's not student housing, but until it is, and it's, it's difficult. At the same time, I also understand that it is impossible to find affordable housing in Kent. I won't say impossible, but it's very difficult to find affordable housing in Kent for new families and younger families. But also to find affordable housing for, older and established families who are in that middle bracket. At this point in time, I think I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Clapper and vote yes, with the understanding that we can put on certain conditions if we make this change, so that if a building was to be proposed, we can have some control over that.
Clarify, you could put conditions on a proposed project, but not on the recommendation you're making to council for
Correct.
amendment.
Correct. So begrudgingly, and so that it can move forward, and Amanda, I would highly recommend that you contact your council person, because I think I'm going to have to do the same on this because I'm still a little torn. Begrudgingly, I'm going to agree with Mr. Clapper and Mr. Ellis in voting yes to meet that 3 vote threshold. But I plan on reaching out to my council members. In-depth conversation.
So the previous motion was denied, so we'll still need to have a new motion made, set forth.
So I As an abstention, my parliamentary procedure might be rusty in this area, Eric, but I believe that I can entertain a motion to reconsider.
Would you like me to remake the motion, Eric?
I think we have a new motion that makes it nice and fresh and clean. Chris, I'm not saying you're wrong about that. I don't recall.
That's fine, Jeff.
Okay. What if I were to throw you a curveball and go the other way now?
I think Amanda would be pretty happy about it.
Okay. I move that in case PC 21-010, the Planning Commission recommend to the Kent City Council to approve the zoning map amendment to amend the 4.47 acre parcel ID 45-00-00-053-000 from C commercial to CR commercial high density multifamily residential.
It's been moved by Mr. Clapper. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Bellis. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Abstentions. Motion carries 3-1. It's my understanding that we have a whole bunch of minutes that we have to get through.
Thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Yes, and I have to amend edits to the minutes before they're approved. I think Kim sent those out, but if you did not get a chance to read them, I could mark those edits verbally on the record, or you could just, they were pretty much grammatical, tense, or clarifying words. So if you want me to go through those edits to the minutes, I can.
Was that for the April 6th meeting only?
No, I actually have them for all the meetings except for December 15th.
Okay.
So she sent them out, I believe, for the April 6th, but I also have them for 3 sets of earlier minutes as well.
I will ask, and if any of the commissioners want to hear them read through, they can, but do the edits that you made change the intent of anything past that we discussed, or is it just grammatical and housekeeping?
Yes, they are grammatical, housekeeping, or to clarify vague wording so that future readers can understand what it was in reference to.
I am comfortable in accepting those without a formal review if the other commissioners are. However, if anyone else wants to hear those changes before we consider them, speak now.
I can go without them.
Okay.
I don't need.
Same.
Okay. So the first set of minutes is from December 15th, 2020. Amanda, myself, and Mr. Clapper were the 3 in attendance. So I'd have to ask that Mr. Bellis abstains when we consider that. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from December 15th?
So moved.
Moved, Mr. Clapper. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded, Ms. Edwards. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Abstentions. The minutes are approved with 3 yeses and I believe 1 abstention from Mr. Bellis. The second set of minutes is from January 26, 2021 with all commissioners present. Is there a motion to approve the January 26 minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Clapper. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded, Ms. Edwards. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Abstentions. Motion carries 4-0. Minutes from February 9th, 2020 with all commissioners present. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved, Ms. Edwards. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded, Mr. Clapper. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, motion or minutes are approved 4-0. We have minutes from February 17th, 2021 with everyone but Ms. Edwards in attendance. So I have to ask you to abstain on this one. Is there a motion to approve the February 17th minutes?
So moved.
Moved, Mr. Clapper. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded, Mr. Bellis. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Abstentions?
Aye.
1 abstention, 3 ayes. The minutes are approved. And we have minutes from April 6, 2021 with Ms. Edwards, Mr. Clapper, and myself. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Move, Mr. Clapper. Is there a second?
Second.
Chair, did you say April 6th?
Yes, I think I did that backwards, didn't I?
That's okay. I need to abstain.
So sorry. I just put them in the wrong spot here. Hold on. Sorry, Mr. Clapper, you moved to approve Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded, Mr. Bellis. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstentions?
Aye.
One abstention. Minutes carry 3-0.
And to clarify, the February 17th minutes are technically February 16th. That was one of my typo corrections.
I think I said it right when I read them, but I saw that and I was like,
You did, I know. That's like, it caught me as well. You did say it right, but it's wrong on the minutes themselves, so. But it's correct on the agenda.
these minutes have haunted us for long enough. We're through it now, so we can get them out there. If there's no other business to be considered, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Move, Mr. Clapper. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. Edwards. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We are adjourned 8:28 p.m. Thank you all. I apologize for my cat Zoom bombing half of the meeting. We got a new puppy this week, so he is absolutely terrified and hiding from the puppy in my office. So it's been a fun time.
All right, good night, everyone.